so back to work. Got to get these intercoolers ready to go. So I've already got them marked out how much we're going to cut off of them. We're going to chop these in the bandsaw, join them together, and then we'll actually weld the two cores together. Then once that's done, we will get the dimensions of the intercooler so we can start drawing up the end tanks, the tanks where tubes go in and out. On each end, these are vertical flow instead of horizontal flow. So a lot of cars will run a horizontal flow intercooler just because of spacing. But in this car, the best that we could get was a vertical flow. That's going to fill the front of the car up with the intercoolers as much as possible. And I think it's going to make the plumbing from the turbos into the intercoolers and then out of the intercooler into the intake manifold the most symmetrical looking and the most efficient as far as length goes. That one is cut and we got to clean it up, but first we're going to cut the other one. So getting these intercoolers cut down to size, sanding them, tacking them together, building the end tanks, putting them in the car, getting all this plumbing run to them, that's kind of the last big part of fabrication that we need to do for this project before we can take the engine out of the car and get it back over to D-Sport so we can build the engine and get all of the internals dialed in so we can get one step closer to this thing running. It's coming along pretty quick now. All right, so we got these guys sanded down. Sean's got a plate here so he can actually run the tip of the TIG welder across it, somewhere to place his hand too so it doesn't get hot. We need to put a good amount of heat into the intercooler core, and as you're putting that heat in there, it's literally trying to take the heat out. That is what it's designed to do, and it's very good at it. That's gonna pull a bunch of heat out. It's also clamped to a steel table. That's gonna try to pull heat out of it, and it's very close to all these fins. We do not want to damage those fins at all. One, for aesthetics, it's gonna look terrible, but also it's gonna restrict some of the airflow. Now, if these were completely covered up, I don't think it would make that much of a difference. At this point, it's really just to make sure that doesn't look terrible. So Sean's got this. Yeah. He absolutely loves welding intercooler cores. It is a passion of his.
Probably welded at least 150 cores.
So in my entire life, I think I probably welded 15 or 20 intercooler cores over 20 something years of building race cars. Sounds like fun.
No.
A little bit of a
Fire there, huh? That's all right.
Don't worry about that. Yep. So we got the rough idea of the end tanks drawn up. Now Sean is taking all those dimensions and putting them into the CAD program so we can design everything, and then we'll put some aluminum into the plasma cutter, cut these pieces out, clean them all up, and then we'll be able to actually put those tanks on here. So he's gonna cut the front and the back, and we'll tack those in place, and then we'll take a strip of material, we'll tack that, and we'll wrap it around to basically create that box on each end of the intercooler core.
So this is gonna be the top, kind of what it's gonna look like. The bottom, we're gonna have two side plates and then a middle plate that goes around the top, and then it'll all get welded. All right, so the files are all set up in the CAM software. We're gonna chop out the
Chop them out.
files are set up in the CAM software. We're gonna get the intercooler end tank pieces all cut out. Once that's cut, we'll clean them up, take them to the bench, tack them up, fit them on the intercooler, and then we should have an intercooler today.
And then once those tanks are kind of tacked on there, we'll be able to set the intercooler into the car, figure out its positioning where we want it, and then figure out how we're gonna make mounts to hold the intercooler into the chassis, which will be a little tricky, but we'll figure it out.
You knew it.
Try it again.
Jamie, cut that out.
Try it again. There we go. Just press start.
Yeah.
Just press
all right. Bam. I made it. First shot.
Sean got the end tanks all bent up and tacked together, so we're able to tape the tanks in place and sit the intercooler in the car, get it positioned, because this is the first time we've actually had as big as it's going to be, right? The whole size. It is very large. It's taking up the entire front end of the car, all the space that we had left. Now we need to put the hood back on the car, put the bumper on the car, and just make sure that we're not going to be sticking out of the hood or sticking out of the front bumper. I think we have plenty of room here. Before we commit to this and start making mounts, we're gonna put those on just to double check. Yeah.
That's a problem.
Close.
Up.
Close.
We're close.
Maybe just a little more angle.
Maybe a little choppy.
Let's see how much room we got down there. We can go down a bit.
Down.
Lay it down. Not with the bumper.
Oh.
All right, so it's pretty big and it's looking like it might be a problem. It might not fit. So we're just gonna adjust a little bit lower, see if we get it to move around in there.
Sneak in there somehow. It's pretty tight. Not a lot of room.
Yeah.
Still needs to go down more. The
That makes
intercooler
sense.
looks like it's clear in that spot. We need to figure out something else to hold the intercooler in place that isn't gonna hit. Once the bumper swings in place, it's actually right at the opening in the front bumper. It's actually in a pretty good spot. All right, so we got the intercooler in place. I think we actually did not even have the bumper bash bar, kind of like the aluminum crash structure. I think that was already removed when the car got turbocharged originally. That's gone, which doesn't really matter because we're gonna make a new one anyway. We're gonna make a tubular bash bar that we can have spares of so we can replace them easily. The skin is on and it fits in there. It is very, very snug, but as far as the angle goes, the opening in the grill and how everything looks, it looks really good, except I don't like the shape of the bottom tank. It looked cool when it was standing up, but now that it's in the car against this frame rail going across here, it looks a bit odd. And I think we need to shorten it up a little bit too, maybe 3/4 of an inch, an inch. That'll give us a little bit more room on top. I think we'll go straight across on the bottom and that'll allow us to build some tabs off of here to mount onto this frame rail. And then we can get some mounts from here going to the side of the tanks, and then I think it'll be really solid. Sean's gonna work on drawing up some new end tanks for the bottom. We're gonna cut those out, do the same thing, sand them, tack them all together, put this thing back in the car, and get closer to getting an intercooler on this thing. It's a long process, but we wanna get it perfect and make sure that it's gonna work really well. It's gonna have clearance for everything, but also that it looks good.
So here's the second revision of the bottom end tank. Decided to go with the divided end tank. So this piece is gonna slip in here and then get welded on the sides. And then we also made these kind of air diversion plates, which will kind of separate the air and make sure it gets distributed evenly throughout the intercooler. And these will also get welded in.
Progress here. We've got all these double slips on the headers and collectors. They're all lined up now. All the header tubes are in the flanges. Sean is busy right now prepping the intercooler. He's going to tack the end tanks on there so we can get that intercooler in place and start designing the mounts. Once that's done, then he can come over to the car and tack all these sleeves in place and then take it all back apart and weld them all the way around. Then we'll have to come back to the car, reassemble the whole thing, line them all up, click them back into the flanges, tack those in place as much as we can, then pull the whole assembly out of the car and weld all the tubes to the flanges, bolt some tabs that go onto the collectors to hold the collector onto the headers. Still quite a bit more left in this process. It's a bit tedious to do it right, but obviously we're doing it right. This is ready to go. Intercooler will be ready to go in a few minutes. Get this thing mounted up, then we can make the charge piping. So basically off of here, we'll come down to the intercooler, and then this will basically be ready to go for when we get the intake manifold. And then when we have the intake manifold, then we can make the top two tubes, upper charge pipes that go into the intake manifold. A few steps getting completed today, and obviously we still have quite a bit more to do. So we finally got the intercooler in place. It is where it's going to be mounted. So we've got the bumper cover on there to make sure that it all fits properly. It looks good. And now we're just figuring out the mounts. So I think we're going to do some tabs that come off of here. We'll put a couple nutserts into the chassis here so they'll bolt down. And that'll be kind of to hold it in place to position it. And then we'll do some mounts off of the side here that will go from here and then onto the side of the intercooler. I think that's going to be pretty strong. It's going to be kind of complex to make the side mounts, but working with the space that we have and the design of the chassis and everything, I think that's probably going to be the best, the easiest way to do it.
Hey, these are the tabs for the bottom of the intercooler.
Oh yeah.
That was
Sweet. Somewhere. Probably just need to lift the intercooler up just a touch so it gets right in that corner.
corner. Corner.
That'll be
Corner's nice.
Corner's the best spot.
Yeah.
So basically, if we put it in the middle of the panel somewhere, the aluminum panel could break. But if we're on that corner where it's all welded up, that's going to be the strongest spot, right?
very strong.
Yep. Yeah, we don't want this thing to crack. If you get a crack in the intercooler, especially down here on the tank, it's going to leak out a ton of boost. It's gonna make the car really laggy. Sometimes it's a real pain to figure out that something's wrong. The turbo, like if we're targeting 20 pounds of boost, the turbo can make 30 something pounds of boost. It'll still make the power, it's just gonna be laggy. And then we're gonna have to go and look at all the data and try to figure out, is it leaking? Look at the turbo speed sensors.
Not only that, you risk overspinning the turbos.
Yeah, which is pretty critical on these turbos, so we don't want to do that. But we are going to have the speed sensors and all that stuff to help us basically diagnose any problems if we do have problems, but it's better just to not have problems. So we'll make sure that the intercooler is mounted nice and strong, and hopefully we won't have any issues, right? Yeah,
Hopefully.
hopefully.
Yep.
Change of plans.
So these, just had Sean make those because he hasn't cut anything out on the plasma for about 2 days now, and I don't want him to get rusty. So got to stay in practice, make some tabs, throw them in the trash, make some more tabs, scrap them. Yeah. No, but we're gonna change the design up. So if you stand here and you stare at something long enough, you can come up with different ways to make a mount. Originally, in my head, I thought it was gonna work well to get something to mount to the frame here and go on the side of the intercooler itself, the core, not the tanks. I don't really want to mount anything to the tanks because that just is kind of like asking for trouble. The tanks are 1/8 inch thick, pretty solid, but if we start mounting tabs and stuff to them and there's vibration, they could crack. What I think we're gonna do is build kind of a square tube frame with some 1 inch square tubes. So we've got these spots here that are symmetrical on both sides, so we can make a plate that basically wraps around like this, 1 inch square tube that runs across the front here, more tubes that will drop down, and then on the end of the tanks here, or on the end of the core here, we can weld a plate on that has tabs sticking up, so we can actually bolt that directly to that square tube that's dropping down here. And then if we need to take the intercooler out, we just unbolt these bolts and the whole thing will come out easily. We also need to mount oil coolers, so having this square tube and those tubes on the side will give us really good stuff to work with to be able to figure out how we want to mount those oil coolers. Because I want them on this side of the intercooler, so basically as the air is coming in, the colder air hits the intercooler first, and then it gets warmed up, and then it goes through the oil cooler. The oil cooler temps can be, 250 degrees. That's not a problem. You don't want to see over 300, that's bad. But the intercooler, you want to get as cold as possible. So if it's 80 degrees outside, if you can get that intake air charge temp to 90, 95, 100 degrees, you're doing pretty good. If we put the oil coolers in front of that, then we'd have 200 something degree air going through the oil coolers and into the intercooler and basically be heat soaking the intercooler. So that's why we want them on the other side. And then I think we might even put fans on the backside of the intercooler. So when the car is moving slow or when it's sliding sideways, we're not getting a ton of air moving through the front grille. When the car is sideways, pretty much all the air is on the side of the car. You're not getting really good airflow. So fans there that'll blow through the intercooler and through the oil coolers, just keep the underhood temps down as well. So I think that's the direction we'll go.
Knocked my hands.
I thought you guys said it was hot. Yeah, they're pretty good. I think we just need to knock that side down and it'll line up. Cut another one out, and you can just use the same file. Stop it. Yeah. Fucking hot. Oh! Woo! You want some blood? Yeah, good. Smells good.
Jeez. Whoops.
So we got these parts all cut out, sanded down, and ready to go. So we're tacking them in place, and I just sanded this tube down just a touch to get it to fit in between there. So once we get those tacks in there, we'll drop this tube in place, tack this in place, and then we can start figuring out the rest of the mounts, the tubes that are gonna go down, the plates that are gonna be on the side of the intercooler that these are actually gonna mount to. But first, this needs to be in place so we can get all those measurements. I think we just need to drill that rib nut out of there. Give us a little bit of room to work with. We'll probably have to do a 2-piece plate for this too. Yeah, because on top, if we make it come over, we're not gonna be able to get to the bolts because of the intercooler tube that comes through here. So it's probably gonna have to bolt in this way. It's all right. Sean get some more practice on the plasma table. Yeah, 30 millimeters by 40 millimeters.
by 40. Boom, done.
Then the bottom.
Bottom.
We're playing fishing over there in the plasma table to get these little tabs. These are gonna go on the base of the tube here. This tube is gonna sit like this. The other tabs that have the holes in them are gonna go on the front face. So this will sit on top like that, and then the other tab will sit down like this and bolt into the chassis this way, since there's so little room up here. Otherwise we would have made the tab wider and had a bolt there, but with this intercooler tube coming through there, it was just gonna be too close. So we decided to put it on the front side. It'll work well, it's easy. Should have this knocked out in, I don't know, an hour or so. You feel like working fast, Sean, or you, Nah. These welds are looking so much better. Yesterday I had to run out and get more gas because the place that we were getting the gas from, 3 shipments of gas that was contaminated and the welds were not looking good. This is like nice and silver as it should be. When you get those blues and purples, all those different colors, that rainbow, that means that basically the weld is oxidizing, and that's not great. It's depending on how bad it gets, it can be brittle. Nice silver welds like that are very clean, no contamination. It looks like it's still hot. You want to test that for me?
It's good.
Yeah.
Yeah, good.
Sean, careful with my arc.
Hey, didn't see you there. My arc.
Yeah, try to fix the light again.
How'd Sean die? Sticking welding rods
well,
into electrical outlets.
I'm insulated.
With those welding gloves.
Semi.
Those aren't even welding gloves.
Exactly.
You're good.
Oh.
$5. You're good.
Mike does arts and crafts in his spare time.
Yeah, that's why I'm such a good drawer.
Drawer.
Really good at drawing.
All right.
Give it a couple eyes.
All right, he's got some ones bigger than the other.
It's got a, well, you know, it's winking.
Ah.
Got a little doggy nose, right? You got a little, little
snout.
pup face.
Okay.
We got some little, that's a weird ear. Needs some floppy ears. Need some floppy ears. Now that looks like a cow or some kind of ram. It's not a dog. Come on.
Come on, Mike, you've been practicing all this time, brother.
I got kids. Some floppy ears. There we go. It's
Oh, there we go.
easier to do floppy ears, and then give a little, you know,
It's a pretty good dog.
need some arms, legs, whatever you call them on a
Yeah.
dog. There you go.
dog arms.
There you go, and a little back paws here, a little, you know, sitting down like a good boy.
That's actually a pretty good dog.
The little nails.
That's a good dog.
Boom.
Boom.
What's up, dog?
Shit, brother.
All right, now make that, put that in the SolidWorks.
Cut it out. Cut that out on the plasma cutter.
Let me just get the SVG and all that.
You want to scan that?
Yeah. Where we mount the oil coolers.
Figure that out when we get them.
But no, I'm just thinking if it covers, are we gonna be able to get to those bolts? Are we gonna have to pull out the oil coolers and then undo this to pull it?
I don't think it's going to cover it.
Never mind. Because we have these
Take the
bolts
whole thing.
and then take those and we take the whole thing.
Exactly.
Yeah.
All in one.
That's what I... Jamie, cut that out.
All right, this is coming along. Sean's going to drop the mounts for the side of the intercooler. Once that's in place, we can drill these holes, put some nutserts in here, bolt this in, and then once the intercooler is actually mounted into the car, we can make the tubes that are going to go from the outlets on the turbo compressor into the intercooler. So we'll get both of those done. Then we can put the X pipe back in. We've already got the wastegates mounted on there. We're thinking about a few different ways to run the wastegate dump tubes, but I think the cleanest way to do it is going to be basically just to have them dump down underneath the car. We were looking at ways to get them out of the hood, but with the positioning and with the X pipe and the headers and everything else that's in the car, it is very, very cramped. There's not a lot of space. The only way I think that we can get those out and still make it look good is to dump them out underneath the car. It's not gonna hurt anything. It's gonna be totally fine. It's a normal spot for wastegate dump tubes to go. We did want them either out of the fenders, out of the bumper, out of the hood, but where they're positioned, to get those tubes to come out would have to kind of come past here, past the intercooler tubing, out, around, and then back out and forward, and it would just be kind of really weird looking, just these long kind of 2-inch tubes kind of all over the place to try to get them outside the front bumper, or if they went to the fenders, like coming up and around and over, it would just look really weird. We're not gonna do that. We're just gonna dump them out underneath the car. It'll be really simple. It'll still look really clean. I think it's gonna look a lot more symmetrical and simplified like that. And then when we get to the point where all of these are done and mounted, which we can do after we clock the turbos and make those intercooler pipes, because we're actually gonna mount these turbos solid to the chassis, and that mounts on the back of the compressor housing. So these need to be clocked before we can do that to make sure they're in the right spot, because there's a bunch of bolt holes on the backside. We build that mount and it's twisted a little bit. The turbo is going to sit sideways. It's not going to mount up correctly. So once we get all that done, we can make these mounts, and then we can make the exhaust dump up tubes. So these will come out and kind of follow the same path as the headers. So it'll be right in line here and then point out and exit out through the hood for all of the excitement, the flames, the anti-lag, all that stuff. So we're gonna have those kind of in a similar spot to where they were before on this car, a little bit further out and a little bit further back, I think, but same idea. So it's coming along now.
Should we do like triangles, circles, octagons?
What do you feel like welding? Circles, triangles?
What are we working with here?
See what kind of shapes you got.
Some ellipses, you know, maybe a little slot. Ooh. A little 3-point arc slot. Ooh, damn.
You could, I guess, do a big slot.
Like a happy face.
All the way through it. You could do that too.
Oh, big slot.
A big slot and then stitch it.
We like slots. Jamie, cut that out.
Warming it up. All right, we got the intercooler in place now, and we put the X pipe back in here so we could make the intercooler piping and make sure that we're not gonna run into anything. Actually just started working on these, and they came together pretty quickly. And they look pretty good when they're in the car. If I can get it back in there.
Yeah.
There, more? No, less. There we go. There we go. Those are lined up. They're not gonna stay by themselves, but close enough. They look good. So we're gonna take the aluminum tube, copy that, make it into aluminum, tape them together, tack them. We'll have some intercooler pipes in the car. Finally. Wrong side, Tim, wrong side. No.
I can't see.
Put the bolt side in first.
Oh.
Got it.
crazy how far this car has come just from the last couple of months, being from a modified-ish stock car to basically a full race car. But there's still a lot to do, even though it's already looking insane. Some of the front end stuff, it looks freaking crazy. So imagine it popping the hood on the track at a car show, maybe? It'll be pretty cool.
It's still a little toasty. Slightly toasty.
Man, look at that thing.
Yeah. There we go.
Yeah.
There we go.
Yep.
Nice.
Good marks.
Just to make sure.
Just enough.
That's a good ass pack right there.
It's toasty right there. Nice and toasty. Put that right there in the hole.
In the hole. Is it 180? It's like right in the hole?
Yeah, I think so. It's close enough.
Cool.
All right, we got the intercooler in. It's mounted. We've got the intercooler piping in place. We've got the X pipe back in. Actually been able to make a good amount of progress. This is pretty much almost completed as far as the fab goes before we pull the engine out of the car so we can get the engine built. We got to take it back over to D-Sport. They have a bunch of machine work they still have to do on it. We have to order some bearings. I did get some info on the bearings for the Ferrari crankshaft because they just go color coded. So now I know what the tolerances are in between all those bearings so we can order the correct ones, but I need to measure everything in the block first. We need to get that out because I don't know how long that's going to take to get these parts coming from Italy. But this is almost done. We've got a little bit of welding left on the wastegate tubes, and then we need to make wastegate dump pipes. So we've still got our braces in here for basically keeping everything in place while it's welded, but we're just about ready to take these off. And when we do, we can make some correct brackets that are gonna hold the X pipe in place. They're probably gonna come off the frame down here and hold these pipes. And then the dump tubes, the wastegates are gonna get clocked slightly, so instead of going straight down, they'll kind of come towards each other and then dump under the car down there. So this area will have another 2 tubes kind of coming down there. And then we can't finish the top of the intercooler up yet because the angle of how these tubes come out and whether they stay completely parallel or if they have to go out or in slightly, all depends on the intake manifold positioning. So the guys are working on that design right now. They should have that finished up probably in about a week. And then when that's done, we can get that intake manifold actually 3D printed out of plastic so we can do a mock-up, get that in the car, then we can make these tubes. We did scan a lot of the stuff on top of the engine, so the guys that are building the intake manifold have that scanned, so they know where the valve covers are, they know all the spacing on the intake manifold, they know how close the firewall is, those 2 braces that are up there, they've got all that info. They should have everything they need to get this design done. It is a bit tricky. This engine wasn't designed to run turbocharged, wasn't designed to run regular fuel injectors. We've had to get a bit creative, and I think we're actually gonna end up putting the fuel injectors on the inside here, pointing in that way. As the ports move this way, the only other way would have been to have these things come up and over fast, and trying to machine those out would have been nearly impossible because you had to do this big tight wave, and I don't think that a CNC cutter could have gotten inside there. So these things would have had to be maybe 3D printed and then welded onto something. It would have been a big ordeal. So the guys came up with a different design where those runners can be straight, the injectors can be on the inside, and I think it's gonna work really well, and I think it's going to look awesome. I can't wait till we get that part finished up. It's coming along, it's looking really good. It is what I had pictured in my head when we first took this car apart and I was planning how everything's gonna go together. This is what I thought. I could not draw it down. I couldn't put it on a piece of paper to save my life, but we're able to make it happen. The headers came out exactly how I wanted them. They're positioned in the right spots. Everything flows well together. And I think that after all of this work is done, we're actually gonna get that crazy high-pitched V12 sound back, which is going to be absolutely amazing. This car needs to scream. And with 1,500 horsepower of the wheels, what we're building all of this for, it is going to move like a rocket ship.